Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with aBlogtoWatch. Please subscribe to our videos on YouTube and like this video if you find it useful. This is a review of the Seiko Astron GPS Solar Dual Time, and I'm just going to call it the Astron Dual Time. This is one of a couple of versions of the Astron. There's the original Astron, there's the Astron chronograph, and there's the Astron Dual Time, and this is one of the nicest ones yet. So just to sort of a little bit of a brief on the Astron collection. The current contemporary Astron collection is Seiko's GPS-controlled line of timepieces. And what that means is that the watch receives signals from GPS satellites in order to update the time anywhere you are in the world. So what you would do is you would push down this button here, and probably because I'm indoors it's not going to happen, but it goes into a receiving mode. And it's really cool because it tells you actually kind of like how many satellites it's able to get. It's up to 4+ there. It's going to work for a second there and go ahead to try to find the satellites. Again, they're probably not going to work because one of the downsides, and I guess it's sort of a downside, is you have to be outside with relatively good line of sight. So this particular version of the watch is in titanium, and Seiko uses a coated titanium which is quite scratch resistant, so you get the really nice light feeling of titanium, but you also don't have to deal with a watch that gets scuffed up and scratched very easily. They've been getting really good about the size of the GPS watches. So this one is 44.6 millimeters wide. And if you compare it to the aBlogtoWatch review of the original Astron, you'll see that it's a much thinner case. And I'll put it on my wrist in a moment, and you'll see that it's a much more wearable design. There's a lot of versions of this one. This just happens to be, like I said, the titanium with blue ceramic. So there's blue ceramic links down the bracelet, and the bezel is also blue ceramic, and you have a blue ceramic metallic dial. The dial is very crisp, lots of interesting elements, very three-dimensional, and also quite legible. The hands have a lot of lume on them. The hour markers are raised, and you have a lot going on the dial. We'll get there in a second. Nice folding bracelet there, solidly made. And again, this version, there's also a steel version, but this version is very, very light. So I'm gonna talk about the functions, and I'm just gonna put it on the wrist there, and you can see that it is quite wearable. Again, at about 44.6 millimeters wide. It is not a small watch, but it wears just in a much superior way than the original version of the Astron. So I don't want to say if you have the original and you need to upgrade, but this is definitely an improvement, especially in terms of the size. So what does this particular version of the Astron do? What's going on the dial here? Well, you have a lot of little useful features there. Just by default, you have this sort of half dial here, which has a couple of purposes. One, it's used during the GPS reception mode to indicate the signal strength. It also uses it's a power reserve indicator. So this is a solar watch, so light enters through the dial and charges the movement. So as long as you are outdoors or in a well-lit area, your watch will always be powered, and it's very handy there to see on the scale there. So this one's almost fully charged. And you also have the daylight saving time indicator there, and that's one of the only sort of manual things you have to do with the watch is tell it about daylight saving time. Over here on this right subdial, that's a day of the week indicator, so you can see it says Monday there. And then the lower subdial here is for the second time zone. That's why it's called dual time. You have a very small subdial there, which is an AM/PM indicator for the second time zone, and that's important because unlike GMT watches, which have a different time zone in 24-hour format, Seiko has decided for this 8x53 caliber movement, which I think is a good idea, to have the second time zone in a 12-hour format, and then you have a window there for the date. So using the watch, once you get a hang of it, is relatively easy. I'm going to show you how to change the time zone, because the idea is you don't have to set the time, you just adjust the time zone. So I actually have it on Anchorage. You use the reference cities on the bezel and the seconds hand here. So I pull out the crown one stop, and then I move the hand in either direction to different time zones. So I have a full 24 hours here, different time zones, and I just change it that way. So there we go. It becomes the time zone at LAX. And you can see that the date also changes, or the day of the week also changes, which is kind of cool, and then of course the date. In order to change the second time zone, let me see if I remember correctly, you hold down this lower pusher. Oh no, you have to take the crown out. Oh yeah, so you take on the lower pusher, and then you do the same thing. So I have to pull the crown out. Well, I guess that's still the first one. There we go. So that little hand points there to tell you it's the second time zone. So now you can see I'm changing the time zone there for the lower subsidiary time zone. And what I can do is I can choose either one to be my reference time, right? So if I want to make sure that this second time zone tells me, you know, here we are in Rio, I can just do that very easily. And then I can have two time zones that are easy to read, very legible, in a nice 12-hour format that I like. I was just had it back on LAX time just because I thought it was funny. But let's put it in, I don't even know some of these reference times. And it's very handy actually, because if you don't know the 3-letter reference city, there's also right next to it on the inner bezel the GMT, or they say UTC, plus or minus, so you know. So let's put it over to Sydney there. Boom. And again, you'll have the AM/PM indicator there for the second time zone in order to know whether it's day or night. So pretty handy watch. And again, the overall features, in addition to the day of the week and the date, is having one time zone plus another time zone. So no chronograph. There is a different version of the watch with that. But I think that you'll agree that in terms of the sort of travel nature of the Astron and what it's best for, having the two time zones is probably the most handy feature, and probably the one that you're going to want the most, especially if you are using this as a travel watch. And again, this makes a perfect travel watch because the entire idea is that you can have it set the time automatically where you are, always be very accurate, and then easily change the time zone. So it's about not having to set it, it's about accuracy, and it's about never having to worry about the power because of the solar power generation. So overall, good concept, and Seiko just keeps making this better and better. And I'm actually quite interested in what the market size is for the GPS watch market. Anyways, the Seiko Astron GPS Solar Dual Time in this particular version is $2,200. Again, this is the titanium with ceramic. It's going to be less than steel, and I believe there's some versions on straps which are going to be even less. And you can see the full review of the watch on aBlogtoWatch.com. Thanks.